Truth is, I got trolled the other day.
And it got you.
Trolled. I wasn't angry. So it didn't like get me. It didn't like get my goat.
Maybe a little bit.
Nope. Wasn't angry.
I wouldn't have commented back.
I know. You're different than I am. Yeah.
Or, no, I would have, but I just would have had a question. And
Yeah, but I knew what they were trying to do. So I was like, you know what? Fuck you.
Yeah, but I think the reason why I want to talk about it today on the podcast is because I want to know what their answer to that question would have been.
Fair enough. It would have been an interesting answer.
Because the egotistical side of me is like, okay, let's pick any event
That I'll beat you in.
and I will beat you.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Like, unless you pick something that takes some skill limiter that I just have not had any practice with that skill. But if it's a capacity, I will beat you.
For sure.
And it might turn out this person is solid. But I highly doubt it. They're sitting behind a keyboard.
That's not what people that are good at things do.
So what happened, Todd?
Oh, well, I made a post about I faked being you, and I'm
glad you say that.
And I made a placard reel type post on our Instagram account, and it was just it said people think that hybrid training is just bodybuilding and running. It's way more than that. It's strength training, athleticism, endurance training, and high intensity training and high intensity conditioning. Being a hybrid athlete means you're capable of demonstrating strength, endurance, and athleticism, not just running and looking good with your shirt off. And some dipshit commented something like, oh, we get it. You just want to be mediocre at everything or something like that. And I was like, oh, I forget what I said. We get it. Like, you don't actually understand how this training works or something like that. And so he just starts going in on me. And I was like, this is hilarious. Oh, did you screenshot it?
No, did you take it down?
Oh, yeah, because I blocked him. So it's gone. It's all gone.
Oh.
Yeah, it's all gone.
That's dumb.
Yeah, I didn't realize it would do that if I blocked him. Because he just kept going, and I was like,
wouldn't have done that. It's good for the algorithm. You want those comments to stay.
Oh well. Anyway, but just essentially starts calling us bad people, and he's saying that
I feel bad for you. I think he said.
Well, no, but he said I feel bad for people like you, and because essentially because he's saying you can't be excellent, trained to be excellent, and include more than one component of training in a program and make the program work. And it's like, well, that's like all I've ever done. We've ever done for our entire fucking careers. But, and so I just kind of gave it back to him, and he's like,
sort of, which is part of what I want to talk about.
Cause he was like, oh, you're something, an Instagram comment get you. I was like, no, I'm just pushing back against a jerk. That's all I'm doing. Yeah. So I don't give a shit. Like, but I wanted to see if he'd try to explain himself, but he just kept trying to lightly insult me, So I was like, okay, well then this isn't worth my time anymore. But anyway, what do you want to talk about?
Well, no, on that, I mean, the best part is we don't know who it is, and they don't know who we are. So like,
oh, for sure,
it's all very dumb.
Yeah, it was stupid, but it was fun.
No, it just made me think. I don't think that most people just begin training with a hybrid athlete training approach, and neither did we. Like, no. You did specialize. You were like sports is like
I played football,
and then you were like all in on powerlifting.
For sure, so it was. Yeah.
Then it became this more well-rounded, more hybrid-esque. But before it was even being called hybrid.
But I mean, if you look at, I don't know. It's a tough definition because you can sit there and say, okay, but it would be good to know this person's definitions, but regardless, because it would have been fucking stupid. But if you look at the examples that we have, why are you smirking so hard?
I just love how you're fired up. But go ahead.
I'm not fired up. This is just how I talk. How many years have you fucking known me?
I know, but it's funny.
If you look at the examples that we have of the different feats going even back to Alex Villeda. Yes. You know what I mean? And squatting 700 pounds and still being able to run a pretty good marathon time. Neither of those things are mediocre. Or is it like Fergus Crawley who deadlifted 500 pounds and ran a mile in 5 minutes or something like that?
So his goal was to deadlift 500 and run a mile all in under 5 minutes. So literally the bar was on the track, and I think he did 5:03, which is ridiculous.
Both of those things, if you want to look at, if you want to go to an elite powerlifting,
but he's also squatted 500 and run a sub 5 minute mile in the same day.
But so look at this though. But so if you want to sit there and say that 500 pound deadlift What level of elite do you want to go to?
Yeah.
Do you want to go to a powerlifting?
That's my question.
Yeah. Do you want to go to like a specialized powerlifting person that can, like, if you stratify that across the human race, there is, other than elite powerlifting or something like that, or specialized powerlifting, there's no population where deadlifting 500 pounds isn't special. Like, that isn't a special ability. And then to be able to do it and also have the aerobic power to turn around and run nearly 5 minute mile, like, get the fuck out of here. That's absolutely exceptional. Just about every possible way.
But it wouldn't make you an elite marathoner. It wouldn't make you an elite power lifter at your weight.
And you know what?
And it doesn't matter. But that's my point. Is like, that's where I'm just like.
But you know who does that? Your fucking parents, man. Like,
well, yeah.
you're born that way. Like, and then you put good training on top of it. The only way that you're elite at that fucking level is that you have the genetics to be elite. That's how that works.
And potentially some good drugs.
Good drugs will help a lot, but it's like no one is. It's like, so for me, I was just like, when I saw this comment, I was like, you just have no idea what you're talking about.
But it comes back to my only question and what I wish you would have commented. I mean, I get where you went. I know you. But if you just been like, thanks for the comment, man. Like, let's define mediocre. Like, what's the bar? So what are the things that are mentioned on there? Power, like for let's say strength, endurance, body composition. Like,
sure.
What's considered mediocre?
Yeah.
And then if we can define that, then you can just go like, okay, well, that's not true. Like, here's our situation. Here's people that we've trained situation. It's just, no.
Yeah. And I get it. And it's like, I think I just wanted to be a dick back to a troll. I just wanted to be a dick to somebody that's being a dick, so.
But I do think, going back to the original post, the way that you approach things could make you just lackluster and mediocre at everything.
If you don't know how to do it.
So it's not to say that just because you're like, yup, I'm doing hybrid athlete training. Like,
well, that's my point. Is like, well, no, like, you just don't know how to do this. That's the issue, is you don't know how to program it. If you're saying like you can't be excellent at more than one thing, like, you're out of your goddamn mind. Yeah. Like, you absolutely can. It's just, can you be world class? Probably not.
Yeah.
Not unless you're born, and the training's not going to do that for you anyway. So it's going to be that your mom and dad were the right people.
Yep.
So I don't know. It's just ignorance, and that's fine. But I don't know. Caught me at the right time, so he did.
So I don't know where we want to go from there, because that's the main thing. Like, what do you want to talk about today? I'm like, well, I think just this does hybrid athlete training make you...
I think you have to... So what we could talk about is like, how does concurrent training work?
Yeah.
And it's you just emphasize different qualities at different points, and you understand that you have to layer different qualities on top of different other qualities to make sure that you have access to things. And then you build this broad base of abilities that are sincerely above mediocre. And then if you want to add if you want to add specificity to it to do a specific thing, you have access to all the things that you need to have access to do that. So, like, for example, Fergus Crawley, I would imagine, didn't just deadlift and run a mile to prepare to deadlift and run a mile. Like, he had a base of strength. He has strength capacity. He developed aerobic power. He developed his aerobic capacity. He obviously has some level of athleticism. It's like... So if you know how to program those things on a yearly cycle, and then also how to fit those things into a training week, so you have your developmental training sessions where the things that you're most wanting to develop get the most stress, your stimulatory, and then your recovery sessions. And if you know where to press those buttons, you can absolutely develop and maintain more than one thing at a time. And I think people like that, I think you would imagine like, oh, there's the interference effect or something like that. We fucking know that that's not real.
I think at a certain point it is.
It depends on your training volume.
Yeah.
Right. You just don't have time is really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And
we weren't calling it hybrid athlete training, but if you look at the way that we've been training for years, and I mean, I was reading Alex Viada's work, but if you look at like what we were doing in strength faction before we moved to this gym, it's still, I look at it and go like, oh, okay, we weren't calling it that, but it's hybrid athlete training, right? And that's what I was doing. And then we came over here, and the strength faction style of programming for them, like a little bit of a, what would be the word? Like, I wouldn't say I think the strength action program was a little more advanced, just mainly from an exercise selection standpoint.
Skill standpoint.
But point being, like, that just kind of turned into what we do here. And so really 2015, I mean, I've been lifting a lot longer than that. But if you look at like from 2015 is when I just got ridiculously consistent with that style of training when we started strength action. I was doing some other stuff before that, but let's just use that. But it was all just, for the most part, with like a general physical preparedness
focus, mindset.
Focus, you know, and at times be like, all right, we're going to do the what was it called? The tactical strength challenge, right? Okay, we got pretty specific and like really dialed in our snatches and our deadlifts and our pull-ups. And then from that, we went and placed top 50
in the world
as a team, right?
You and I, yes, top 50 in the world.
You, me, and Jess, I think. It was you, me, and Jess in the team because it was 2 guys and a girl.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, then yeah.
So top 50 in the world. And then it's like, I'd done other things in that time, but like fast forward to when you challenged me to do the Georgia Death Race. It's like, I say like, man, that was a really long train up, but really to go from barely running at all, like run-walk intervals, to placing.
I was actually going to use you an example, like to fire back against that guy. I was like, he could still out deadlift most people while he ran for fucking 82 hours a week and then finished towards
ninth in my age group,
9th in your age group, and
36th overall
on the
hundreds
on a 75-mile race, and it was the first time you fucking did it. It's like, but I also understood what I was dealing with. But
skip the 5K, 10K, half marathon,
just 75 straight on. So,
but it's just, but it was cool, and I think like what finishing out that example is, I think that's just a really good representation of a general preparedness base with hybrid athlete training, and then going, all right, I'm going to get specific with this, and then all right, back to general, and now segued into jiu-jitsu and like whatever's going to come after that. But like, it does work.
Oh, for sure.
It does work.
Like, and what does? I guess I don't know. It would have been. I don't know that we would have gotten a very clear definition of what mediocrity is from this person. So.
You are.
Yeah, I'm fucked. I am the definition of mediocre. So it was just, and I think that people that want to think about what elite is or get caught up on different things like that, it's tough for them to understand, or people that just don't have the experience or the knowledge to understand that you can do more than one thing at a time. It's just a gap between what they can perceive. What are you looking at?
Well, no, we're going to keep going with this, but I was like, there's one other thing we're going to touch on today, and it's something we've touched on before, and I think it can kind of come off of this, but for me, like, I think someone could look at it and be like, well, CrossFit, like, is that hybrid athlete training, right? And I got a text from someone completely out of the blue yesterday.
It wants to be. That's what it wants to be, but it is not that.
And the text that I got yesterday, should I just go into this? Is there more we want to say on
I think what we can talk about is like lay the foundation for and I've been meaning to talk some shit on CrossFit for a little while.
Well, no, I'm saying, or is there anything else we want to say on the internet troll?
Oh, no, fuck that guy. I'm done
okay.
with it, so.
Do you want me to give backstory, or do you want to just jump in on
the science? We'll just talk about science. So like,
okay,
let's do that. And
should I share the question first?
Share the question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So out of the blue, good friend of mine, Rick, hit me up. He didn't say hi or anything. No, I'm just messing around. He texted me just out of the blue yesterday, and he says, "Is stroke volume a real thing?" Yes. And can it be significantly improved? And I just said, yes. Why? And he said, mine sucks, LOL. And I was like, well, what testing did you do? And he said, my heart rate activity. It spikes super quick and remains high even when it feels like I'm giving half effort. During workouts, to include long distance running, it frequently hits 180 plus beats per minute. A buddy of mine runs long distances and he never goes above 150. And I just said, because you're doing too much high intensity work with CrossFit. And I said, yes, because he's built an aerobic
base.
You're yes, because he's built. Oh, you're the guy that mispronounces something on every episode. I said, yes, because he's built an aerobic base that CrossFit doesn't give you. And he said, well, I think I had the same issue when I was fighting. He has a background in martial arts, mixed martial arts. is there and Muay Thai, is there a formula to build the base you're referring to? And I didn't answer him. And I literally, when you were like, what are you doing? I just texted him. I was like, oh, by the way, filming a podcast for you on this.
Oh, okay.
So I know we've touched on this, but I think it kind of falls into this like concurrent training.
Well, and here's what, and this is like, well, starting with like, are people that compete in the CrossFit games at the highest levels, are they hybrid athletes? 100% they are. But they do not do CrossFit. That's what people don't understand. Is like they're not doing fucking WODs,
okay,
bro.
So
like
here's what they would probably say to us, like where I want to be like, well, what is mediocre? They'd probably say, well, what is CrossFit?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, but they're not okay. They're not going to a fucking box.
They're not doing soccer mom WODs.
They're not doing like a million. Go ahead.
WODs are benchmark workouts. Like this is my outsider's perspective from CrossFit is like if you want to look at like most people do these different named workouts. You go into the gym that day, hey, we're going to spend a little bit of time. We're going to do our warm up. We're going to spend a little bit of time on skill. And then the workout is very short and very intense in a lot of circumstances. And it's these name WODs. And in a lot of cases, you look at the way that people would use those. And I get it that you go back to the original days of CrossFit and it's like CrossFit HQ would just put up, here's the workout of the day. Here's the workout of the day. But really, if you want to be competitive at the most elite levels of CrossFit, you're not just doing these benchmark workouts and calling that training.
Yeah.
You need to have skills coaches. You need to have an Olympic lifting coach. You have an endurance coach. You have, and even like the endurance coach might be looking at the total like physiological perspective.
What is the load? Yes.
And you probably have a running coach, a cycling coach, all these different things. So,
and that's the thing is CrossFit by itself, by a training modality, and it's not just benchmark workouts. Like I've looked at other CrossFit style training lately. I've had shit sent to me, and it's like, it just lumps a bunch of intensity together with no rhyme or reason. And so with looking at, if you parse it all apart, what people need to be good at CrossFit and go compete is they need an aerobic base. They need the skill of whatever thing they're doing. They need endurance on top of that. They need to be strong. And you layer those qualities. You don't go do CrossFit to get better at all those things, right? And so what's happening with Rick is when you go and you just do CrossFit workouts all the time, you overtrain your glycolytic system.
And even, I'll say, we just saw this with someone that I assessed coming in from a pure martial arts background. There could be other confounding factors there, but going and training a martial art intensely could be mixed martial arts.
That's all you're doing.
Could be Brazilian jiu-jitsu. But if like you could make the argument, well, my heart rate's pretty low when we're just doing the technique stuff. Sure, but then we spar or we roll, whatever you want to say. And in a lot of circumstances, and I've been tracking this in doing jiu-jitsu, and that's been my biggest thing is like, okay, I need to offset the amount. I've never done this amount of high heart rate work in a given week because every day we roll and we roll hard, right? Yeah. So he is obviously getting this in CrossFit, but knowing his background, he also was building these pathways
in Muay Thai,
in Muay Thai and in mixed martial arts as well.
Yeah. So when you don't do enough low heart rate work, not switching cameras for you.
There it goes. It wasn't.
Yeah. You overtrain your glycolytic pathways, and so if that's the predominant energy system,
what does that mean?
Use, your glycolytic pathway
for someone, yeah.
So
it's
when
listening, he's like,
it's when you burn carbs mostly. Yeah. Like you get into a higher heart rate, and like typically for most people, they're going to end up hanging out in zone 3. When he's running, obviously his heart rate's getting really high. Like that's very high. But for most people, you end up somewhere in zone 3, and you just burn carbs for fuel. And so since or anyone that would train themselves to just do that kind of work all the time, they jump right to that. And so that's the fuel that he's trained his body to use. And so that's where it goes. Every time you start physical activity, it's going to jump to there because that's what you've trained it to do. And since you haven't built the endurance base that you need, your heart rate's going to jump to there. It's going to recruit fast twitch muscle fibers way too fast. You're not going to use slow twitch muscle fibers as well as you could. And you're just not going to have the adaptations you need to keep your heart rate down at other with low intensity activities. Like, so for example, he asked about stroke volume.
It's part of it.
Yeah. So what do you mean?
Just meaning like stroke volume is not
I'm going into an example. He said about stroke volume. The reason his stroke volume sucks is because the stroke volume is the amount of blood you pump out with each beat. Cardiac output is the amount in a minute. So your stroke volume sucks because your heart's beating so fast all the time. You haven't trained it to actually expand and pump out more blood with each stroke. And you can only do that if you do work at lower aerobic intensities. And
there are adaptations that happen from doing all that high heart rate work structurally.
Absolutely. So your heart walls become more rigid. Like you don't have the same kind of capillary beds. Like you don't utilize fat as fuel as efficiently. So like typically you start off exercise, there's different kinds of substrates in your blood. Like one of them is plasma, free fatty acids. And then you start to pull intramuscular triglycerides out and use them for fuel. Well, you don't get good at that unless you train it, and you have to train it by doing low and slow aerobic work. And so that's when you don't have these energy pathways developed, you go to the Penergy pathway that's developed all the time. Penergy, God. And then energy pathway. And then you just don't have the same level of endurance and stamina. So because you have to burn carbs, you burn them fast. You don't have nearly as many carbs in your body. And that system just fatigues way quick. God damn. I shouldn't have said a fucking word to you.
Yeah, see? I don't have to say anything.
You just fatigue way faster. So you just don't have the same level of endurance. And that's one of the reasons that I think, like, I saw, people reaching out to me about hunting workouts and all this kind of stuff and like doing CrossFit stuff. It's like, you're going to get fucking tired so fast when you go out to hunt because you do not have the aerobic base to do what you need to do. So yes, if you train CrossFit, I think CrossFit's fucking stupid. Do I think it's impressive what people can do in the games? I absolutely do. But they don't do fucking CrossFit. Yeah. They don't train CrossFit.
At the elite levels.
At the elite levels, yes.
So let me go back to the question.
And if you're going to do CrossFit workouts, you need to offset it with a ton of aerobic capacity work.
Yes.
That's where you see mediocrity. That's where the guy would be right? Because if you go and do the fucking WODs every day that have whatever their on-ramp is, their buy-in, and then they do some mix mash of bullshit of strength and jumping around and conditioning together, yes, that is how you get mediocrity. So if that's what you're defining as hybrid athlete, for sure. It doesn't, if that's what he meant, I would agree with him 1,000,000%.
Yep. So is there a formula to build the base you're referring to?
Hours and hours of aerobic capacity training.
I wonder if we can find, keep talking, I'm going to.
Yeah, I mean, you need to do, we talked a little bit about this on the last episode, but just long aerobic sessions, keeping your heart rate in zone 1 and zone 2, accruing a lot of time in zone 1 and zone 2, and moving slow until you can move faster in those zones. And running, full body movements like rowing, biking, all of that kind of stuff, it just takes time, and volume. And that's how you start to get those aerobic adaptations. But to really start to train the pathway, you have to spend extended time in those heart rate ranges, like 60 minutes or more. And that's what really starts to train that. And then you start to get those adaptations that we're talking about. So you have better capillary beds, you have more stroke volume, you have better cardiac output, you're better at utilizing fat for fuel. And then when you go to do something that's not even intense, your heart rate doesn't jump. So
I wanted to find, you wrote a blog
a long time ago about why CrossFit's stupid.
Like 20, no, I mean, sure. But
how
really
it was
basically like if I was going to train in
dude,
CrossFit
I lived in Connecticut
games.
when I wrote that.
Yeah. So 2013
or 14.
Yeah. I know that it's on both websites. It was on the beyondstrengthperformance.com website. It was also on the bspnova.com website. For some reason, everything in that era on bspnova.com, you can find the blog, but when you click on it, the body doesn't show up. But I can go into the back end of the website and pull it up. So maybe I'll pull that thing from the dead and
we should bring that back.
See if I can link that in the notes.
See if I still agree with everything that I said.
I think I read it.
I
went in the back end and read it not too terribly long ago, and I think for the most part you would.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's it. Is you have to understand. I think a lot of people don't understand what training is, and they don't understand how to train a different system, and that's where they get confused about these things. Where like, well, it burns and it's hard when I walk up the mountain, so I just got to do hard shit all the time, and that's what's going to make me good at it. And it's like, I get that it's counterintuitive to think things a different way, but like, that's why we're here. That's why we spend our lives doing this shit. So it does seem counterintuitive. You think you would just get better, but if you train yourself to do that thing all the time, you know, just like every time, if you start creating a pattern, like every time you walk into the kitchen, you slap your wall and eat a piece of chocolate, guess what your brain's going to tell you to do every time you walk into your kitchen? It sounds silly, but it'll fucking happen. Like, you're going to want a fucking piece of chocolate. So it's your body responds to the things that you give it, and it responds to context. And so you have to train it to deal with context in a certain way.
You might remember this. Probably 2020. It was definitely 2020, 2021. I randomly one day, I know you were in the gym. I randomly one day was warming up and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go run the loop, which is a mile basically.
Yeah.
And I'm going to come back in and then work out. And I don't know if you remember this, but I went out the back door it was the last facility.
Okay.
Went out the back door and I ran the loop. But I was just like, man, when I used to run, I would just go run. And so like, as soon as I went out the door, I just sent it. And I came around, I think I ran it in like 8 minutes or whatever. And I came back beat red, and you were like, you good? And I was just like, dude, that kicked my ass. Like, what in the world? I used to be able to run 6-minute miles. And so it's just funny thinking on that happened. And then there was the experience with some of the tactical folks, the time where, I don't remember why, I think you said to them,
Chris is going to run with you.
Chris is going to run with you guys. And I had not been running at all. And then I showed up. I was like, all right, you gave me a heads up. And I was like, damn it. All right, whatever. I'll take my running shoes. And it was an easy run. And I ran with the front group. And I was able to carry on a conversation the whole time. But that conversation for me was strained. and these guys, it wasn't. And that was like the most eye-opening, frustrating, just, all right, something's got to change. And that's what prompted me to start running, but actually look at like, okay,
how do I do this?
How do I do this? And that's when I started doing run walk intervals, and I built that up to consistently running. That's when I ordered the curve treadmill that I have at home. But that's what started it all. And if someone would have told me at that time, you know, man, that was definitely 2021, right?
I don't remember.
Definitely 2021.
When you started running consistently?
When that group was going through their training.
I think so.
I
Yeah.
think it was 2021.
So. Yeah.
To then contrast that with just 1 year later with the very next group, and I know with the group that's going to be graduating here soon, going out with these guys on a run, and now being the guy that can be running with the fastest people and having someone say, what's your heart rate at? Because mine's above what we're supposed to be. And I'm like, oh, I'm like 138 right now. Like, hey, we can slow down for you. Like, that's crazy, right? But it was just through time, volume of doing.
Yeah.
And it sounds counterproductive because you're used to like white knuckling everything from doing lots of volume of easy work and occasionally appropriate times doing intensity.
Yeah.
But
it takes volume.
Lots.
It takes volume.
Lots.
Yeah. And time.
And maybe it wouldn't require as much. I had a goal of doing this 74 mile, lots of elevation change. It wouldn't have taken as much volume as I did, but it's pretty simple.
It took me, I'm by no means a good runner.
But you've made massive progress.
But it took me about a year to be decent at it. Yeah. And like now I can go out and run. Like my threshold pace is under 8 minutes, which is not elite, but I'm a 200-pound guy that carries a lot of muscle and hasn't started running consistently, 18 months ago?
If
something like that.
I don't even know if it's that long ago.
And hasn't run consistently since he was 18.
I don't think it's 18 months because Georgia Death Race hasn't even been 2 years. And you were not running at all for like my whole train up. Like,
I did run walk intervals,
but not for a while, because it took you a while. I don't think before the Georgia Death Race, because I know that you would hit me up like on Fridays and you'd be like, you're on your long run right now. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 miles in, whatever. And you would always have some type of snide remark, like a pussy, like whatever, you know? You definitely weren't running then. So that happened in March of 2023. So dude, I don't think you're much over a year. Like, and you weren't that far in when I finally was like, when I challenged you to the,
it was in the late fall,
the rock and roll
last
half.
year.
When I challenged you to that, you hadn't really been doing like continuous running yet. You were still doing mostly intervals. You were just starting to dabble a little bit in some like continuous intensity. So
yeah, maybe.
But that's a good thing. Like I'm saying that, like,
oh, for sure. I'm not taking it any kind of way.
It's developed even faster than I think you think.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And if you're listening to that and you're like, threshold under 8 minutes, like that's a pace that you can hold for at least 30 minutes. I think you can hold that for longer than 30 minutes.
It's an hour.
So, the testing is 30 minutes.
Well, no, typically they say you can hold your threshold for an hour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So,
but
yeah,
an hour or slightly more. At least that's what
I think. Half marathon is technically
your threshold.
Threshold.
That makes sense to me, because like I wasn't quite at my threshold during the half marathon,
but I didn't run it.
I didn't run it as hard as I could have. For sure, I did not. But, yeah. I mean, but the thing is like I did it, like I did a lot of it. You know what I mean? And that's what really. And I know that like I preach to the pulpit every fucking time we talk about this, but like I really think that low and slow running, starting with run walk intervals, is the best way to develop your aerobic system. I really do. I think it's like, if you can do it, if you don't have the orthopedic limitations, or you're not obese. I think if you're obese, you probably shouldn't start with that. Like, you need to lose some weight first. But for everybody else, like if you can run low and slow, that is the best way to develop your aerobic system.
And it goes
unless
back,
you need something I'm going to caveat.
Yeah.
Unless you need specific development for something, like if you're a rower, if you're like, obviously you need to fucking row.
Yeah.
But everybody else.
It comes back full circle to how, when I was like, I don't know, is there more to say on the troll? And you were like, well, I think we can talk about concurrent training, which I think comes back full circle to answering Rick's question. Is like, you can go do the low and slow work, but it still matters. Like, if I'm also making an assumption, I know that he's doing CrossFit, because I know that he's competed I believe he's competed in the near past,
recent past,
near past, same thing.
The near past.
If he's going out like most days of the week and doing these really hard CrossFit sessions, and when I say hard, I mean these high intensity CrossFit sessions.
Supposed high intensity
CrossFit sessions. And what Todd means by that is that a lot of people think they're working at high intensity, but they're actually doing things in the messy middle so frequently that they feel high levels of fatigue and think they're working really hard, but they're
not actually working with the output that they should feel based on their perception and based on their heart rate.
Yeah.
So
because you're doing so much that you're in a constant level of fatigue that you can't really go. But so the total layout of everything that you're doing, Rick, matters. So it's not just, I mean, it may be a positive depending on how much you're doing, but it's not just adding in low heart rate running or run walk intervals. The other thing too is, you mentioned about like, if every time you walk in, you slap the wall and you eat a piece of chocolate, that's what you're going to do all the time. Yeah. It's like he's saying, let me read it again, but I think he said every time he runs, his heart rate spikes to 180 plus. He said during workouts to include long distance running, it frequently hits 180 plus beats per minute. My question would be, if I held a gun to your head and you weren't allowed to beat me up, Rick, and take my gun.
Because he could beat you up. Yeah.
And said, hey, we're going out and I just want you to play around with your speed and let's see if we can keep your heart rate under 150, we'll say for now, under 150. I'll bet you could do it, but it's going to hurt the ego a little bit. Yeah, it's going to hurt the ego a little bit because you're probably running with other people and playing a game of keep up, and that's why your heart rate's so high. But if we were to say, hey, go out, easy Sunday, just keep your heart rate under 150. I would actually say lower, but for just example's sake, you probably could. Mm-hmm. It's just that the example of
you're going to have to walk some.
You slap the wall and eat chocolate, like you're used to probably feeling a certain way when you run, and you got to ditch the idea of chasing that feeling.
Yeah, I said something about this recently about people training is not. Oh, I said it on Bo's podcast. Training is not about feelings.
Yep.
And you have to you should perceive certain things when you're doing certain type of workouts. So certain workouts should feel a certain way, but you should not be tracing a feeling with your training. You should be doing the thing that you need to do to move you forward and progress you towards whatever goal or towards developing the thing that you need to develop. And sometimes that's really easy, boring shit. Sometimes it's stuff that makes you question why you're doing what you're doing. Sometimes it's a little bit in the middle, sometimes it's mobility work, sometimes it's lifting, sometimes it's running. You have to step back and take an objective look at it and say, like, if I really want full development, well, then I just need to do the thing that's going to give me what I need to do right now, And I do get that, like, for most people, there has to be an element of enjoyment, but like, I think you can get by that if you have a really good fucking reason for what you're doing, where it's like, I've been waiting. I still don't like to run, but I know what it does for me. And I can see myself in the high Sierra in August, drawing back on a black bear. And I know that I'll be ready because I'll do all the things that I need to do. And running's part of that. And so I continue to run. I also see like 80-year-old Todd still kicking ass, man, and like, if you can step back and start to attach those things, and you have to let go of your ego. And that's not easy for anyone to do. Less of all, like, dudes. Like, we have a harder time doing that than chicks do, for sure. And we just want to fucking have big muscles and show how hard we can do things and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you have, like, for example, I fucking didn't do the kettlebell mile this year. Because I showed up, I was like, I feel like hell. I'm training myself I'm close to the edge, and if I push hard today, I'm going to have something bad's going to happen. So I'm not fucking doing it. And whereas, like, internally, the voice is like, you're a leader. Well, they're going to, like, you can't go out and push. Like, you should be able to go set the example, blah, blah, blah. But, like, I was able to take that and say, no, you're going to be smart and set a decent example for the people, and you're going to show up and support them. And like, it would be the wrong call for you to do this today. So You have to let go of your ego, man.
There's a time to train feelings.
Yeah.
There's a time, in all seriousness, to
you have to understand what hard feels like sometimes. To
train the mental game and to learn to, there will be times where
don't chase feelings, I guess.
Don't chase feelings.
Right.
Yeah. But there will be times where, especially when you get into things like long runs or run intervals, like VO2 max intervals, where you're just like, I can't do anymore.
I'm doing those in 2 weeks.
And instead of listening to the voice that says you can't do these anymore, you just set tiny goals. Like, it's instead of thinking, oh my God, I have 3 hours of, say a long run, I have 3 hours of this today. Just, hey, I want to see if I can keep my heart rate at whatever, blah, 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 for the next 20 minutes. Or I want to see if I can get to there without, just setting little mini goals. Like, it's like doing the Georgia death race with, like, I forget how many aid stations there were, but I never thought about, I guess at times, of course you do, but I never really thought about 74 miles. All I did was just go, 8 miles to the next aid station. Like, that's easy. All right, 10 miles to the next aid station. The whole time, all I thought about was how many miles to the next aid station. And it was like I ran multiple races and that they culminated in the 74 miles.
Yeah, segmentation's huge.
When you're doing VO2 max intervals, like it's just seeing, I would always do it, not always, but most of the time I would do it in the same place. And like an example would be on a track, because there were definitely some times where I had to do it out on the track where we train the other folks. And I would just be like, all right, on the first rep, I made it, whatever, like however many laps, or laps and percentage of next lap, whatever. And then it was like, all right, like that sucks. I don't know if I can go again. Hey, let's just see if we can match that. Right. Or sometimes you're like, you can go slower on this next one, but then you start and you're like, well, what if you just start at the same pace and you can slow down at any time? And then you just keep going, I can still go this pace. I can still go this pace. I can slow down anytime. So But I think you hit the nail on the head. Don't chase feelings, but train feelings. So
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like certain workouts should feel a certain way, but you shouldn't like, I have to feel this way when I run, or I need to walk out of the gym feeling like I murdered myself with every session.
Yeah.
And like those are the things that people chase, but it is a narrative that's perpetuated in a lot of different realms of fitness. And it's just ignorance. And it's because, first of all, I think a lot of the people that perpetuate that narrative don't fucking know what they're talking about. And second of all, sex sells, man. And it's like, if you want to sit there and talk about like the things that you can do or how hard a workout was or like things like, yeah, that's what people are going to be attracted to that because they put a certain level of their identity to it. I always come back to like the CrossFit gym that I consulted with in Rochester when I was living in New York. Is like they tried to say that you did kipping pull-ups because that's how you got in and out of a fucking helicopter. It's like, no, you don't. Like, I'm nobody, and I know that that's not true. And second of all,
have any of you done this?
And second of all, you're a fucking accountant, bro. Like, you're never gonna have to do that. Like, it's just silly bullshit that like, you know, just attached to these weird aspects of ego. And it's like, you're just not training. And if you're going to train, you can bring this full circle. You can develop all of these things to the point where you're not some fucking mediocre bum that can just do things. Like you can do shit at a very high level if you know how to fucking train. Yep. So I'm done.
I was gonna say, I think we end it right there. All right. I hope that helps, Rick. If you have any other questions, you can hit me up out of the blue again. I love hearing from you. Okay, thanks. Bye.